Thank you. I would like to call the June 8th, 2021 Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting to order. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the June 8th, 2021 HRA Commission meeting agenda?
Commissioner Olson moves that we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting, the 8th.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the agenda by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Beloga. I will now call a vote on the motion to approve the agenda. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, no. Myra, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Beloga.
Aye.
Hugheen. Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
I just realized we didn't do roll
We
call
didn't do
first.
the roll call. We will go. We are here, but let's go back and make it official. Myra, could you do the roll call, please?
Okay, roll call for the June 8th, 2021 meeting. Commissioner Beloga.
Aye. Are here.
Commissioner Hugheen.
Present.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Thorson.
Here.
All members are present and there is a quorum.
Thank you. All right, now moving on to number 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes of May 25th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes for the May 25th, 2021 meeting?
So moved. Beloga.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Same second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Beloga to approve the May 25th, 2021 minutes, second by Commissioner Hugheen. Myra, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Beloga.
Aye.
Hugheen.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. Now moving on to discussion items. Item 4.1, an update of the Lindale Avenue Retrofit Strategy. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you. Julie Farnham is joining us as a guest that will provide an update on the Lindale Avenue retrofit.
Thank you. Welcome, Julie.
Julie, you may be muted.
Can you hear me?
Now I can. Now.
All right, great. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Julie Farnham, Senior Planner, and I'm going to provide an overview of the Lindale Avenue retrofit strategy that was adopted by the City Council on April 5th. And I think you were given an update on this, I want to say last fall, perhaps. So there might be some similarity here, but this is really the final plan. So I'm gonna just go through that, if I can figure out my controls here to move this forward. Okay. I also wanted to say that the plan was adopted by the City Council on April 5th, and it has since been formally incorporated into our comprehensive plan as well. So what is the retrofit strategy? Well, it's a plan to shape the future of the corridor, and it's really outlines a vision and a set of principles and targeted strategies to help guide redevelopment in the corridor and position it for the future. So why Lindale? Well, first of all, a few years back, some of you, I know not all of you were on the HRA at that point, but the council and the HRA directed staff to do a study of the neighborhood commercial nodes in Bloomington, the older ones, and Lindale came up, or at least Central Lindale was identified as one. It didn't rank that high, actually, compared to the other 8 or 9 that were reviewed. However, when our former community development director, Eric Johnson, came in, he started asking a lot of questions because he drove around and he looked at Lindale and he said, you know, Lindale is looking a little worn. Are we doing anything about that? So that's really kind of where the root of it was, but it's one of the oldest commercial corridors in the city. Most of its development happened during the 60s, and it's still, while there have been some upgrades since then, obviously, it still has a lot of those same characteristics. It's very auto-oriented, a lot of strip centers, et cetera. There's some older housing. And it is showing its age and not realizing its full potential. Although that said, there is still a fair amount of viable business on the corridor. So, but it could do, there could be more. It really could be a much more vibrant area than it is. It's a corridor that really is kind of the heart of the city in a lot of ways, or historically, traditionally, it had been the heart of the city, really the major commercial corridor in Bloomington. So it serves the entire city, but it also kind of functions as the neighborhood main street. So the corridor, particularly on the west side, is surrounded by an established single-family neighborhood. There's also a fair amount of multifamily existing in the corridor. And a lot of those folks, this is where they shop for their day-to-day goods at the Walgreens or going to the auto shop or whatever. It also serves as a gateway to the city. There's access to the freeway at the north end at 494, and there's also access to, in 2 places, to 35W, so access to the regional roadway system. So it's got convenient regional access. The transit improvements, there's a lot of transit improvements happening here. In particular, the BRT, the Orange Line BRT, is scheduled to open at the end of this year down at the 98th Street Transit Station. That transit station is already serving as a major transfer point for lots of different bus routes through the city. And having the Orange Line come through here will only make that even more so. Met Council has also done some studies to look at how to improve transit service in the corridor, given the enhanced transit service with the Orange Line coming on later this year. So they're looking at having some service that runs on Lindale more frequently, and also in evenings and weekends. And also, we wanted to, you know, the city is starting to see redevelopment interest just all over, but also in Lindale, along Lindale. Obviously, Lindale Flats was recently approved and is well under construction, and there's been some other things going on. So this strategy was intended to kind of capture some of that that interest that's out there. So our approach, it was really important when we started this that we have an approach that included a lot of community engagement. And our team included an artist, and they just did a really great job of coming up with some really fun, creative ways to get people engaged. We were going to high schools, we went to the senior center, we had a couple different activities out in locations on the corridor, met with several business owners, had some focus groups, etc. So it was really a very robust community engagement process. And I don't know if any of you were able to make, I know some of you were able to make some of those, but they were really actually quite a lot of fun as well, and it generated a lot of excitement from the community. So some of the things we heard is that people are interested in seeing more options for getting around, particularly along Lindale. Very strong support for maintaining local small businesses, also expanding housing options and creating more green areas or park areas and providing spaces and activities for families. Another key part of our approach was that it be grounded in some kind of market reality. So the consultant team did include some market analysts, housing analysts, retail analysts, and just a general market study that looked at general trends. So some of the conclusions that they came up with, and these are, it's always, forecasts are always, well, they're forecasts, and there's lots of things that can make those forecasts not come true, but they give kind of a snapshot of our, based on what we know now, what we might be able to expect. And this is really a picture of the potential of the corridor. So I think the big winner here is housing. There's a lot of potential in this corridor to redevelop some sites to add more housing, particularly down around 98th with a BRT coming in, et cetera. New housing in the area is what's really going to drive any kind of new retail. Retail, as I'm sure you're well aware, is going through a lot of changes right now, and nobody's really certain as to what exactly is going to happen with it. But there seems to be a shrinkage of bricks and mortar retail, unless it's specialty kind of retail or experiential retail. People want to be able to go to places and interact. So restaurants, for instance, there's still a fair amount of demand for those kinds of things. The office market as well is fairly soft, and Lindale has never been our key office area. Our districts, our development districts along the freeway are really where office tends to concentrate. However, as I said before, Lindale has a great location with good access to the region, and you've heard the term location, location, location. So there is some potential here to capture some office demand as that starts to build. The market studies for this were done prior to the pandemic setting in. So we did ask the consultant to just reflect on what, if any, changes would come out of that from the predictions that they had. And they concluded that many of the trends that they saw would largely remain. And some of those included like the demand for open space and the desire for open space. In fact, they said the pandemic has probably underscored that. And I think we've all maybe experienced some of that. Just the idea to be able to, even at a restaurant, to be able to have an outside option was kind of a lifeline for some restaurants over the last year. And likewise, the desire for walkable environments and that healthy lifestyle and providing mobility options. And just also continuing the desire for housing and neighborhood affordability. So some high-level highlights of the strategy. It was really, as a strategy, it was really trying to focus attention in key areas. So prioritizing 2 node areas. And I'll dig into all of these a little bit more in a second. Expanding our multimodal options in the area, but particularly along Lindale, improving the appearance and the environmental sustainability of the corridor, creating places for people to gather, strengthening connections, especially between Lindale and the surrounding neighborhoods and employers, and preserving the unique history and character while also fostering new opportunities. So digging down a little bit into the key nodes. So the idea here is, I mean, Lindale is, the entire corridor is like three miles long. It's not going to redevelop all at once. Nothing ever does. But that's a long corridor. And as I said before, there's, a fair number of viable businesses. So they're not just going to go away. So the transition is going to take some time. And it's always good to try to concentrate your efforts in some areas that show the most potential. And so the consultant identified these two areas. 98th and Lindale is an obvious one. We were looking at that a few years ago when we did a plan related to the this transit station area. And so that's an area where we definitely think that there's opportunity to do real transit-oriented development. That means a mix of residential and other kinds of uses that can take advantage of that transit service. The other node was up around 86th and Lindale, and partly because there's some fairly large parcels and that are, could be densified, like around Cub, for instance. There's also lots of smaller parcels that could be redeveloped just right along the corridor. But the idea here is that to be strategic about where we put public investments to foster redevelopment. So digging down a little bit further, this is the 86th Street node and some of the strategies there. So looking at potentially rezoning to from our B2 district to our B4 district, in large part because B4 allows residential and B2 does not. Because again, kind of the key here is to integrate more residential development throughout this corridor, because that's really going to kind of drive it and really start to change the character. One of the challenges here on the east side of Lindale is there's a lot of old industrial, many viable uses, and they're not going to be going away anytime soon. So we're going to have to be very careful about how any kinds of transitions happen between those uses. Another challenge in this area at around 90th or between 90th and 86th is the physical low point of Lindale. And you see on this graphic, this thing that looks a little bit, it's marked with a 4, it looks a little bit like a stream. That's just to denote where there currently is a recurring flooding problem. It's where the bus company is right now. So there's recurring flooding there. It's basically an old wetland that was filled in. And so there might be opportunity to create a regional stormwater facility that could serve a larger area. One of the real challenges with redeveloping any of these old properties is they have to meet current stormwater standards. And a lot of these sites, particularly the smaller ones, they just don't have space. They're, already they're paved. The whole site's practically paved, and then there's a building, and they just can't do anything with stormwater. Perhaps, some of the bigger sites, they do these underground pipe galleries. Those are very expensive. So one idea here is to look at the potential to do a regional stormwater facility and to design it in a way where it could double as an amenity of some sort. So that's the concept here by showing it looking a little bit like a stream. That, of course, is not nearly big enough to accommodate the stormwater needs of the area. The other challenge here, particularly in this part of central Lindale, is because of all the auto uses and industrial uses, this area is designated brownfield. So there are some pollution issues here. So one of the strategies is to start to go after some brownfield cleanup grants, which are out there and available. And the consultants really felt that these sites would be really great candidates for getting that kind of funding. Down at 98th Street, again, similarly, rezoning B2 to B4 to allow, again, a greater mix of uses, but particularly residential. Some of the big ideas here, particularly in the northwest quadrant. So this area, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Was that a yes? So one of the big ideas here, so this is a pretty big block. This is Clover, and then this is Ford. Two very, very big blocks. And one of the ideas here is to break up the block and provide more access internally to new development. So extending Aldrich all the way through to connect all the way up here. It also creates an opportunity to create a more walkable kind of a street. But really the big thing is that it breaks up these blocks and it provides much better access internally for when these sites redevelop. So as we're talking to, for instance, the owners of Clover Center, we're talking about, develop your site so that you can retain this central area for a future road. Another big idea is the creation of a fairly sizable park. I mean, it's not a huge park, but it's a park that would be large enough to, for instance, have some small music concerts or a farmer's market, a smaller farmer's market, but some kind of community gathering, because this corridor really could use a community gathering space. And down at 98th, you've got some of these bigger sites that could accommodate that when they redevelop. It's shown here on the Ford site because that's the most likely place, because there's really no buildings there. So the redevelopment would be easy to do that when they redevelop. So those are some of the big ideas that would really change the character of this area. And the rest of this is kind of infill. Here's another one where, right now you've got these, they're called chicanes. Oops, I'm sorry. Chicane, I'm sorry. Where they this was blocked off. So right now you cannot take Garfield and go through at dead ends because you have to go on, I believe this is Grand, and it curves around. So reconnecting those to reconnect the grid, because it just helps people get around, and the more you can disperse the traffic, the less everybody has forced to go to the main street and cause a lot of congestion. The transit stations site right here, the city owns part of it and Metro Transit owns part of it. And Metro Transit is very interested, that their TOD office is very interested in redeveloping this site. And no, we just put in an application for a livable communities grant. And I know we did not get that grant, but you don't always get those on the first time. There's a lot of competition, but we have another grant that we just submitted, or on the verge of submitting, to Hennepin County, that would, if we get it, would provide $50,000 towards a corridor study of 98th Street and the interchange here at with 35. Because these parcels, or at least the city-owned parcels where the current park and ride and the transit station were purchased with right-of-way acquisition funds. And so they can't be redeveloped unless it's determined that those properties are no longer needed for the interchange. And the interchange that's was agreed with MnDOT and the city and others back 20 plus years ago, includes these parcels as part of the new interchange. MnDOT is interested in exploring new interchange designs. A lot has changed in terms of traffic system design since that last design was done. So one of the things that corridor study would do would be looking at new alternatives for this, with the hope that a new alternative for the interchange could be agreed upon that would essentially release these parcels from being needed to for space for the new interchange at the point when it gets rebuilt, which we don't have a timeline on when that'll happen, but this is preserving the land so that you don't build on it if it's needed for a future interchange. So again, the idea would be that one of the outcomes of this study would be to come up with an interchange design that would show that these parcels are no longer needed for a future interchange, and thus would be free to be redeveloped, because this is could be a really fantastic redevelopment site, right in conjunction with the transit station. And as I said, the Metro Transit TOD office is very interested in partnering with the city and whoever. And they've actually had some conversations with developers looking at that. But until those properties are released for potential redevelopment, nothing can really move forward. So that's the whole intent of that study. So that's, the application is going in, I believe I think it went in today, and we should know in a couple weeks if we get that, and then we would get going on hiring a consultant to do that study. That study would also look at this corridor from basically about here at Garfield or Grand all the way over to City Hall, because that too, City Hall is really not that far as the crow flies. It's just not a very comfortable walk as it stands today. So looking at some ways where that corridor could be designed to make it much more comfortable for somebody to walk between this area, which could develop as, you know, there's always the joke that, oh, this is the third downtown or whatever. But certainly there's potential at 90th and Lyndale for this area to really densify and become much more mixed use. So it could take a while, but the potential is definitely there. Oops, I went backwards. So the consultant looked at mobility throughout the corridor and some of the strategies here, again, really focusing on how to make the area more multimodal. And by that, you know, it's always been an auto-oriented corridor, and it certainly will remain certainly for automobiles, but the idea is to make it more comfortable for bikers and walkers as well. So it's not just autos and vehicles. So some of the things that were explored here or suggested, recommended, are that the city maybe test out some things using some pilot projects. So testing out, for instance, a bike path, either on Lyndale or on a parallel street like Aldrich, for instance. Also, perhaps looking at removing some of what's called those slip lanes or pork chops, you know, those free rights, those little islands that are created, perhaps getting rid of some of those, because from a pedestrian standpoint, those, because people kind of come up to those and they barely look and they just keep driving and they turn right, those have the potential to become hazardous for somebody who's walking or biking. And also just by removing those, you remove the amount of traffic lanes a pedestrian has to cross in order to get across. And also looking at opportunities to widen sidewalks. So mostly that would happen as properties redevelop. They would need to meet our current sidewalk requirements. And because there's a lot of old properties here, they don't. So as they redevelop, that's when that kicks in. And then also looking at opportunities to improve some of those connecting streets that go into the neighborhoods. And by improve, I'm meaning like make them more pedestrian friendly, wider sidewalks, add some trees, etc. And another characteristic of Lyndale, because of how old it is and how it developed, is there's lots of curb cuts. And here again, so if you were walking or biking along Lyndale and there's all these driveway openings, there's just all these different potential areas where you can interact in a bad way with somebody in a car or in a truck or something. And so by minimizing the amount of those curb cuts, that makes it more safer and more friendly for pedestrians and bikers. So consolidating or narrowing up some of those curb cuts is another thing that could happen as properties redevelop throughout the corridor. Public space was another kind of framework throughout the corridor that they looked at. And so again, one of the things that would really go a long way to change the character is just simply planting trees. And again, that'll probably happen in conjunction with redevelopment, or when there's any major segment of the road that gets reconstructed. If you think about, when you drive up and down Lyndale, the north end of Lyndale, because it's more residential and there's a lot of big old trees there, the character changes a lot. So you can almost imagine if there were more trees on the south end, how that character might change, or even a planted median in certain areas. That the scale of the road, because it's going to be a big road because it carries a fair amount of traffic, but you can bring that scale down by having trees on the edge of the road or in a median in the middle, and it just really changes the character. And then creating a safe and convenient neighborhood park connection. So there's a couple parks nearby, just to the west, and as well as a little bit further to the east. There are parks, and then there's the river valley, of course, really not very far away. And we're working actually right now on a bike path connection up from the river valley. That's actually in the works right now. And then fostering year-round activity. So making sure that as we create these these spaces, that they're designed with winter in mind. With regard to retail and business strategies, the recommendation for things like start conversations, get to know your business community out there, and establish relationships with them, and identify, what are their needs, and help connect them to, some of the services, because sometimes it's really about who you know. We do have some programs already, and as you may know, the city is just embarking on a citywide business survey. The Morris Leatherman Company is doing that, and it's looking at all citywide, but that'll work for Lyndale as well. And so they're doing a business survey, and I believe that the results are going to be coming out and towards the end of July or into August. So that'll help give us some ideas on what our business community needs and wants. Some of the more longer term ideas were to work with a group of business folks, organize some of the business owners, and maybe consider doing a strategic business plan for the corridor, and potentially even establishing a special service district. There was a special service district at 98th and Lyndale a decade or so ago. And those are like special taxing districts where the business owners pay into a fund that can be used for maintenance and joint events and that kind of thing. The strategy, the consultant also identified a number of funding strategies that the city can use. Many we already do: TIF, abatement, grants, public-private partnerships. They suggested a couple that we should probably start, get on our radar and start actually going after. As I mentioned previously, the Brownfield Grant Program. They also talked about this thing called the Geographic Equity Fund, and unfortunately, I don't know enough about that to speak with any kind of coherence on that. So I'm just going to mention that. So with regard to next steps, so there's a team of us, a small team of us at staff who were part of the core team working on this, who are starting to meet periodically, just to make sure that we are keeping the list of ideas here on our radar as we go about our business, and we do other things like our work plans, doing the update to the CIP every year, those kinds of things. Also looking at some of the things that are not capital actions, like I mentioned, the business survey, and doing some outreach to the business owners in the community. Those are some things that we can do that don't cost money. They do take staff resources, which has a dollar attached to it as well, but they are soft costs, I guess you could call it. And as I mentioned before, there's this grant that we just submitted to Hennepin County, and if we get that, we'll proceed with that corridor study, which could hopefully then result in the release of those parcels around the transit station for redevelopment. With regard to those pilot projects, that's some sort of low-hanging fruit, if you will. Our Public Works Department is supportive of doing that, but would like to maybe hold off a little bit until we get back into kind of post-pandemic life and traffic levels, so that we can do an accurate test. Because one of the things you would do, like doing a bike lane, is you would test how putting a bike lane along Lyndale would impact traffic flow, for instance. And then there's the opportunity-based. There's a lot of things that are opportunity-based. And so when developers come to us, and some of that, though, is opportunity plus public partnership, because with our Housing Trust Fund and with OHO and some other things, we are, and I know the HRA this is one of your, I mean, this is what you do, is you help prioritize where we should be spending money to foster redevelopment. So plans like this can help you make those decisions. That's the idea anyway. So that will wrap up my presentation, and I hope to be able to answer whatever questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Julie. That was really interesting and very informative. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Farnham? It doesn't sound like anyone has questions tonight, or is everybody muted?
I just
Unmute.
raised my hand.
All right, Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. A couple of questions, issues to put on the table. Do you have any kind of a rough idea of what impact implementing this plan, which is very much in the rough stages and dependent on a lot of things and will take time and so forth, but impact on the tax base for the city that would be generated by doing what we are seeing roughed in, if the extent to which we do it. Let's say that we did most of what we're talking about right now.
Commissioner Olson, well, this plan doesn't really get specific about what development. I mean, there was that market study that said 950 housing units. But other than that, it doesn't get specific to say, you know, this site's going to accommodate 20,000 square feet of office and 50 units or whatever. So it's really hard to translate into an economic, a tax number, because the amount of tax it's generated is going to depend on the amount of development and the type of development. So and this study did not get to that level of analysis.
I understood, and I guess maybe I should make it broader in the sense that when we as individuals go to other communities and we see something that has been rejuvenated, I'll just use that really generic term, it creates an interest. I remember going to Austin, Texas quite a few years ago after they had done the River Walk and all that kind of thing, or San Antonio, I guess it is. And so it creates excitement and you see a lot of people. So I'll just leave it at that. I think that something like this can have that potential and maybe likelihood, not guaranteed. If you want to comment, otherwise I have another question.
Sure, Commissioner. I'm thinking certainly as redevelopment happens, we can kind of track that and see if there's a way to measure those kinds of changes that you're talking about. We could certainly take a look at doing that.
Okay. And then in terms of people listening to, watching this presentation tonight, some of whom have been involved in the opportunities to offer ideas and ask questions of developers and consultants, Stantec that the city has hired, Sports Page Bar being one of them, that was what, a year and a half ago, some of it. And so when you have a huge plan like this, what's realistic to start seeing something significant? Are we talking 3 years out from right now, or 5, or 1, or what? I mean, you're talking about some things like pilots, and we would see the little things, but the big picture that pulls it all together doesn't really take shape for a while. Can you give just a rough idea of when we see that kind of level of activity?
Sure, Commissioner Olson. Yeah, that's always the struggle. And as a long-range planner, this is one of the things that's very frustrating, because in preparation of a plan, you get all excited about the potential, and then things happen, like you have a recession, or something happens and nothing. Like in the South Loop, we finished up the South Loop district plan, and then there was a recession and nothing happened for 5 or 6 years. So there's a lot of things that are out of your control. So the idea in being strategic is to try to identify some of the things that we could move forward. So for instance, an action that could happen is that the city could decide to proactively rezone some properties. We did that after the 98th Street Station Area Plan was done, and the decision was made to proactively rezone the Clover Center site as well as the festival site, but not the third quadrant, which is where Oxdale, it's where the Health Partners is. And in part because we had, during the planning process, had a lot of conversations with the property owners. So one of the things that we could start to do is have those conversations with property owners and take the temperature and see who would be supportive of moving in that direction, and then see if the city council wants to direct staff to actually proceed. Now, rezoning a property does not make a development materialize. So there's still that. And, in terms of, so we don't have a heck of a lot of control over that, except for, to the extent that I think Bloomington is starting to do this, where we're starting to maybe, I don't know, market is maybe the wrong word, but sort of market ourselves a little bit more. But we don't necessarily have a heck of a lot of control over when that happens. Now, the one site that we do have some control over is this one that I mentioned by the transit station. So if we do get that study going, if we do get that grant and we do get that study off the ground, and that study does conclude that we are able to release those properties that are on the transit station site for redevelopment, we know that Metro Transit TOD office, a Transit Oriented Development Office, is interested in partnering with us. And so we could go after some funding with them and partner perhaps on getting a developer on board to see that happen. We also have had various conversations with different property owners, Clover Center, but we don't have any control over when they come forward. We tend to use plans like this to point to and say, this is what we hope to see here, and use it as a negotiating tool. In terms of some of those pilot projects, as I mentioned, we'll have to just continue these conversations with staff. And I mentioned that there's a team of us, a small team of us, that are meeting periodically to keep things moving forward. So whether or not next year, for instance, we could get a pilot project going is going to kind of depend on how comfortable Public Works feels with the traffic levels, because they don't want to do a pilot project until the traffic levels have resumed something that's more normal. So that could be 2 years out, for instance. I know that's not very specific, but
Ms. Farnham, thank you very much. That's a real good stab at a very broad question, and I think I asked it because I think it's on the minds of many residents as to what are we looking for down the road. So thank you to you and the many that have been working for years on this. And Chair Lewis, thank you for the time to ask questions.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Are there any other commissioners who have questions for Ms. Farnham? Hearing none, as this was just an
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, there you are, Mark. Yes, Commissioner Carson.
Regarding the concept of rezoning, and I guess you could call it rezoning proactively. I'm wondering if doing some of that, and I understand we have property owners involved, and it's a touchy, situation, and these are, long-term. This is long-term planning. But, I personally was disappointed when I saw the storage facility going up at near the corner of 90th and Lyndale. And I'm wondering if proactively rezoning or some other tool would allow us to maintain the vision in the interim while the developments occur in a very incremental basis, and not wait for a proposal that is what we like and then rezone while other things go in that aren't a part of the vision.
yeah, Commissioner Thorson, I mean, to a certain extent, what you're talking about is either doing a zoning overlay that does something like that, which is a rezoning. So it's the plan provides some of that. It's like a negotiating tool, but you're right. When the rubber hits the road, if the zoning is allowing something, we have very little latitude. But that is an argument for being proactive with rezoning. And as you mentioned, being proactive with rezoning doesn't always make everybody happy, because some people and some uses will become non-conforming, and so that's a challenge. But there's little ways to be able to stop something that's like a land use that's allowed via zoning without rezoning it. Does that answer your question?
No, yeah, it does. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Farnham? Not hearing any, as this was an informational item only. We don't have any further action needed, but thank you very much, Julie, for that really, really good presentation. For myself, I was really glad to hear that update. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. I am now going to move on to, let's see, we are at item 4.2. This is.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Chair Lewis. Brian Hartman was going to give a brief update about the payment standards really quick, and then we'll go right into item 4.2 from there. And then we will go from there into our new business. We have a guest developer.
I think we have organizational business before
Yep.
that.
We're
Okay.
going to switch it because we have a guest developer.
All right.
and then we'll go into organizational business. So we'll take new business before organizational business.
Sounds good. Thank you,
Thank
Administrator
you.
Coleman.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Brian Hartman?
So hopefully you can see my screen. I'm sharing, Madam Chair, some information regarding the Section 8 voucher program. This question came up when we approved the new payment standards for the 1 and 2 bedroom sizes at a previous meeting recently. And the question was asked kind of the breakdown of what our Section 8 households look like by bedroom size. And we have this for you today, showing that the largest number is in the 1 bedroom category. So this could be a single or a couple. Then there's the 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. Well, 1 bedrooms are at 178, 2 bedrooms are the second largest at 125. And 3 bedrooms are creeping up there. This is probably the largest number we've seen in quite some time, at 94 households, and 4 and 5 bedrooms at 33 and 14, for a total of 444. So these are just our Bloomington local vouchers that we have issued. This doesn't include port-in vouchers that we also assist in Bloomington. These are the vouchers that are issued off of our particular program. So I'd be happy to share any other information if you have, or take questions regarding the breakdown by bedroom size.
All right, Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Hartman? I'm not hearing any.
Chair Lewis.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Hukim.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick question. I've been hearing in my talks with some people that are on the program is, I don't know, do you guys hear anything about a struggle to find like 3 to 5 bedroom apartments? Because that seems to be a big issue that I'm hearing. We have really big families and they're being put in like rental houses. There's rental houses here in Bloomington. One of them is my neighbor, but they're not meeting really great standards either. So I'm just kind of curious on if you're hearing the struggle because of finding those bigger bedrooms.
Commissioner Hukim, Chair Lewis, yes, that has always been a struggle. When Bloomington was developed in the 60s and 70s, when the vast majority of our rental units were built, they were building only 1s and 2s at that time. So the biggest part of our inventory is that older NOAA inventory of 1 and 2 bedroom units. It wasn't until more recently where we're seeing new developments build 3 bedroom multifamily units. So that's what drives people into single family homes, because they can accommodate larger families with 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms. And they are more expensive as well. And we have a variety of owners. Usually it's small mom and pop owners that own those homes. They may own 1 or 2 or maybe half dozen as kind of a sideline to their normal careers. So yes, we are seeing that, but the 3 bedrooms are creeping up there as we're seeing new multifamily units come online with 3 bedroom multifamily units.
Thank you very much. I kind of wanted to address that just because, especially as we work forward with new development and something that we want to maybe push developers to, include these larger bedroom apartments and housing. So just kind of wanted to make sure that it wasn't just me hearing this, that it is really is an issue. So thank you very much for your response.
Yeah. Thank you,
You're
Commissioner Hukim. Are there any other questions for Mr. Hartman? I'm not hearing or seeing anybody. So,
Chair,
oh, yes, Commissioner Beloga.
thank you. I just wanted to thank Brian for assembling this information. It displays what he had said. I think it was last meeting, that about 70% of the vouchers are in 1 and 2 bedroom, which is just about mathematically spot on here. So thanks for doing that, Brian.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? I can see some faces, not all the faces, so you have to speak up. But are there any other questions for Brian? Hearing none and seeing no hands, I'm going to move on then to item number 6, and that would be item 6.1. Agreements with Old Cedar Limited Partnership for Affordable Housing Project at 8012 Old Cedar Avenue. May we have the staff report, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Lewis, Erica Coleman, HRA Administrator. So speaking of 3 bedrooms in new developments, 8012 Old Cedar is a 68 unit, 4-story multifamily development at 8012 Old Cedar Avenue. And so tonight we are asking for approval of the development agreement and all documents necessary to carry out the development agreement between the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and Old Cedar Limited Partnership for the project located at 8012 Old Cedar, as well as approving a loan and the execution and delivery of certain documents related to affordable housing project located at 8012 Old Cedar. And so this project has come before you multiple times in just updates, but also in approval of the redevelopment plan, the TIF plan, and establishing the project area. And so with that, we did have approval from this board for tax increment financing to help with the gap of the development. So that was $1.353 million is what was used, 1.353. And the remaining gap is to be filled with a $975,000 Affordable Housing Trust Fund loan. And so, as we know, we have a revolving loan fund agreement with the city of Bloomington to request a loan from the city of Bloomington for the purpose of project costs to fund gap development for affordable housing projects. And so yesterday evening, on Monday, June 7th, the city council did approve the HRA's request for a $975,000 loan for this development. And now we are coming before you asking for approval to enter into a loan agreement for the $975,000 at 3.25% interest for a 17-year term, with the first 2 years being interest-only payments, to realize this development of 68 units at 8012 Old Cedar. What I want to highlight is that this development includes 29 one-bedroom units, 27 two-bedroom units, and 12 three-bedroom units. What is really, really key about this is that out of all of those units, 6 units will be affordable at or below 30% area median income. So that's really huge. And out of those units also, 3 units will be affordable at or below 50% area median income. And both of those include at least 1 3-bedroom unit. So we're getting into that larger family size and that deeper affordability component. And how that happens is being able to provide gap financing. That's really just key when it comes to the affordable projects. What I do want to highlight is that when this project was initially proposed, it did include 8 50% area median income affordable units. And as we have gone through the project, we have had to lower that to 3 50% area median income units, and the remaining 5 are now 60% area median income units. And so this is still a 100% affordable project, and staff is very supportive of the new unit mix. And staff is supportive of it because we are still looking at deeper affordability with the 30% units. I want to highlight that the reason there was a change to the unit mix was that when this project was first proposed and first brought forward, it included income averaging, so that there were some 80% units all the way down to 30% units. And as the developer went through the process and was approved for low income housing tax credits, there has been some questions by the IRS about whether income averaging should be allowed. And so that question is out there. There hasn't been a decision made, but that does cause some unknowns for equity investors. And so the equity investors did feel more comfortable taking a more conservative approach to protect their investment and say no income averaging, take out the 80% units, we'll do 60%, 50%, and 30%. Well, when that happened, we did not notice that there were still parking charges, which would help the revenue to be able to pay gap financing back. Through the OHO is specific that there is no charging of opportunity housing units, and it defines an opportunity housing unit affordable at 60% AMI or below. And so this created a different situation than what we expected with the OHO and with this project. And so where we worked with the developer was that we needed to increase the rents on 5 of those units to put them at 60%, so that when we are providing the gap financing, we have the surety in their development, in their pro forma, that we will be able to recoup the payments on time. And so that is where the change came from, and why staff is completely supportive and appreciative that the developer was willing to work with us to move this project forward. And so I will stand for any questions. That's probably a lot of information, but I'll stand for any questions that anybody has. But I am looking for 2 motions here. One, approving the development agreement and to be able to execute the development agreement and carry out any necessary documents. And then 2, approving the loan and the execution and delivery of certain documents related to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Also, Paul Keenan of Reuter Walton is here to answer any questions if you have any for him. You're on mute, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Coleman. Commissioners, are there any questions for Administrator Coleman? And I'm sorry, what is the developer's name again? I apologize.
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Keenan. Are there any questions for Administrator Coleman or Mr. Keenan? I'm seeing all muted microphones, so I don't know if that means you have a question and you're not telling me, or because if we don't have any questions, I would be looking for 2 motions. The first motion, do I hear a motion to approve the development agreement and all documents necessary to carry out development agreement between Housing and Redevelopment Authority in and for the City of Bloomington and Old Cedar Limited Partnership for a project located at 8012 Old Cedar Avenue?
Chair Lewis?
Commissioner Olson?
Thank you. I move the motion. I don't think I need to restate it. You read it.
Okay, no, it's in the recording. So.
Okay, so I move the motion that you just read.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Hukim seconds.
Thank you. So the motion was by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Hukim. I will now call for a vote on the motion to approve the development agreement and all documents necessary to carry out the development agreement. I'll stop there. Myra, those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed say no. Myra, can you take the roll call vote?
Beloga.
Aye.
Hukim.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
5 votes for, 0 against.
Thank you. And now on to the second motion, which is shorter. Do I hear a motion to approve a loan and the execution and delivery of certain documents related to affordable housing project located at 8012 Old Cedar Avenue?
Commissioner Hukim approves your motion to approve the loan and additional documents.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Commissioner Olson, second.
Thank you. So motion by Commissioner Hukim, second by Commissioner Olson. I will now call for a vote on the motion to approve a loan and the execution and delivery of certain documents related to affordable housing project at 8012 Old Cedar Avenue. Those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Myra, can you take the vote or the roll call vote, please?
Beloga,
Aye.
Hukim,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
The motion was carried 5-0.
Thank you. All right, now we are on to item 6.2, authorization to modify and extend revolving loan for affordable development at 1930 East 86th Street, Blooming Meadows. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Erica Coleman, HRA Administrator. So this is formerly known as Village Club. This is the project that came forward in 2019 to purchase and preserve 306 units at Village Club, or the address at 1930 East 86th Street. In that agreement with Aon, who is the developer, a $3 million payment on the 7.1, actually it's 7 million, on the $7 million loan is due July 15th, 2021. Due to impacts of COVID, which have been delayed in doing some work, but also revenues are down because all rent has not been able to be received, as well as some costs have increased due to other issues that have arose. Aon is not able to make the full $3 million payment on July 15th, 2021. And so I am requesting authorization to negotiate and modify the repayment structure and execute an amendment to the development agreement and the loan documents related to this loan. What I do want to say is, in speaking with, this has involved Aon, the City of Bloomington CFO, legal, the Community Development Director, myself, HRA's General Counsel, because as we do have a loan agreement that I previously mentioned in our last report with the City of Bloomington, we have committed $500,000 of our annual levy to this loan to cover interest and payments if their payments cannot be collected. And so I'm asking for the authorization to start to negotiate and modify the repayment structure. One, that does not put us in a position to have to use our levy to make those payments. Two, that we can be made whole as quick as possible. Three, that any costs incurred will be covered. So with that thought process, like I said, $3 million was due by, or is due by, July 15th. What we have looked at internally is a payment, a portion of that payment paid by July 15th, another portion paid by January 15th of 2022, another portion paid by July 15th of 2022, and the final portion paid by January 15th, 2023. That will, that schedule is specific because it aligns with when payments of interest payments are due and or principal and interest for the loan that the city took out for the bank for us to take out for development gap funding. Right now, we want to be able to negotiate it and want to get approval to do that. without having to make all of the loan documents public at this point, is really what I'm asking. So if we were to right now, this evening, provide that information in writing, it goes public, I don't know where Aon is at. And we want to be able to enter into the negotiations and the agreement. And if need be, I can bring it back to the board to show what was done. But I would like to get authorization to negotiate and execute using our general counsel, as well as the city's CFO and legal counsel, where we are all making sure that not only is the HRA's interest, number one, protected, but the city's interest is protected, and the housing, the purpose of the funds used is maintained, which was preserving and bringing up to code the 306 units at 1930 East 36th Street, East 86th Street, excuse me. I will stand for any questions. There may be some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Administrator Coleman. Commissioners, are there questions for Administrator Coleman?
Chair Lewis.
Yes, Commissioner Thorson.
So at first blush, this gives me some concern that there's a major renegotiation of a financial transaction that we originally approved that we will not see. And that concerns me greatly because this board has that kind of responsibility. I will, I guess, ask why it needs to be done that, from further clarification of why it needs to be done that way. But I would probably pass along to other commissioners, see if other commissioners have any concerns as well before we go into those details.
All
So
right,
I just bring up the concern right now, and I'm curious if other board members have the same.
okay. Thank you, Commissioner Thorson. So I will reach out to the other commissioners. What are your thoughts?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Beloga.
Thank you. A question for Administrator Coleman. I recall that the $3 million was an amount that Aon would receive on housing credits, and that's how that amount was determined. And I heard your explanation about, rents and additional costs. So would they be using that tax credit money for those items in lieu of the current agreement payment? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, what I didn't say is they were not able to get an investor to buy due to COVID. Due to COVID, all of that has been delayed. So basically the $3 million that we were sure we would be able to get by July 15th of 2022, because that's 2 years from when it was approved, they were supposed to be able to close on the financing with an equity investor. So basically sell the bonds. They were not able to do that because of the impacts of COVID and the loss in revenue. So because they weren't collecting the rent, so the rents weren't being paid, so it impacted the financing. So in negotiations, we would still want to see the payments being made, and it would most likely come from the low-income housing tax credits that they would be getting, but now it would have to come from wherever, because now it would be, we want to negotiate specifically a schedule that we can abide by as it aligns with our obligations that we have already.
Yes.
Thank you for the refresher, because I do recall that I think I've got part of it correct, but part of it incorrect. So appreciate the refresher on that, as I've said. As Commissioner Thorson has stated previously, I have a couple concerns, and one is about transparency of what we do as an HRA and the city. And doing this in a manner that cloaks it from this, visibility from the community doesn't feel good to me. I'd really end up needing to have a very explicit reason that I could understand and comprehend, that would override that concern before I could support that, or at least understand it better. So I'll yield the floor to other commissioners.
All right. Are there any other commissioners that want to speak to this or ask Administrator Coleman questions? It sounds like we have a couple of things have been brought forward. Commissioner Hukim or Commissioner Olson?
Chair Lewis.
Yes, Commissioner Hukim.
Thank you, Chair. I also agree with Commissioner Beloga and Commissioner Thorson that it does raise some concerns. The biggest thing is transparency. That is one of the pillars in the city, especially with I know with the city council, and I know it's something we have talked about as well in our planning and strategic planning. So I think that really does raise an issue. I agree. I would like to know, I would have to have a good reason as well to do that, just because I feel that is something that everybody should be able to be aware of. So that's my opinion. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I go along in the vein of what others have said, and at this point, being the fifth one here, I guess, need to have some idea about how we are transparent given these circumstances. And I'm not sure I followed it fully, but Director Coleman, if you could, I think you said something about you could come back to us at some point. It seems to me that that having some statements from our finance people and from legal or whoever staff determines to be the ones that have the are in a position to explain this, to give a brief explanation of what has been said in some way that can be made available to the general public. And I'm not sure how that can happen, but I think that we need to do that, because as Commissioner Hukim mentioned, we have set a standard of transparency, and I think this can be explained, but at this point, with this amount of discussion at this meeting, I don't think that the public would pick it up that way.
Thank you, Chair Lewis and commissioners. Few things. One, I'm looking to get approval. One, I'm looking to notify you that this is an issue, that it has arose. Two, I'm looking to get approval to negotiate and modify the repayment structure. If there is a need to come back to have approval to execute the amendment, that's perfectly fine. It would be public information anyway, as it gets recorded. What I was speaking to right now is there's a few layers here. Bear with me. I had to learn all this coming on fairly new. So the city of Bloomington took out the loan from a bank or bonds for $15.2 million. And this was done very quickly. And this was the pilot project that really spurred everything, and that we were able to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That $15.2 million has a drawdown date as of December 31st, 2021. So what that means is that $7 million went to Aon's development at Village Club. Another, I think it was about $1 million that went to Lindale Flats. I think it was another project, and $975,000 to 8012 Old Cedar. If we do not draw down any other funds, before December 31st, we run the risk of losing the remaining amount of the 15.2 million, and we will not have a funded affordable housing trust fund. That's number one. With that, we have not talked to Old National Bank. So the city has not approached the bank to say, hey, we need to look at what we can do. This is coming forward before any of those discussions are happening. So it's a little bit hesitation to put the documents out right now, but those discussions will be happening in the next couple of weeks. That is through our municipal advisors that are helping lead that as they were working to do that with the city. Number two, we don't know where Aon stands. And the reason I keep bringing that up is because we are a junior lien holder. We are a subordinate lien or mortgage. They have a senior mortgage that we don't know if they have talked to them or what has happened there, which triggers all kinds of other things. And for us to do a repayment structure, they have to get approval from the senior lien holder. So it's not just, hey, you can negotiate it and bring it forward and the list board approves it and it happens. It has to be approved by the senior mortgage because they lended more money than what we lended. And so when we look at restructuring, that's another thing. So basically what I'm saying is I want to make you aware and make the public aware without putting all the documentation out there before it needs to be put out there. So I am asking for authorization to negotiate and modify repayment structure. And I would go ahead and say to modify my request where it's not an execution of the amendment, but to come back to get approval of the execution of the amendment after we have been able to discuss with Aon, negotiate, and come back to the board and be clear about what has been negotiated, what that looks like, and what the impacts are to the HRA.
Sherry, you're muted.
I should watch my microphone picture and I'd know that. I would say for myself, the change that Administrator Coleman has suggested, that this would be only drawing up, basically doing the negotiations and modifying the agreement, but bringing it forward for us to approve. I think that would satisfy some of my concerns. And also, I think it does address that transparency issue. So I would be comfortable with that. What is the feeling of other commissioners? Commissioner Hukim?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question, and obviously it can't be answered, but I guess one of my concerns is that there's issues right now with payment. What's to say? I don't see things changing dramatically anytime soon. The workforce market is just kind of starting to get back. But I do think rent is still going to be an issue for a time to come, and catching up on rent is going to be an issue. So I'm just wondering, what kind of safeguards are we looking at safeguards for the future? And is that kind of what this is going to do as well? So that would be my question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Lewis, Commissioner Huheen. So that's the hard part. In allowing the extension and looking at what that would look like, how do we protect ourselves as a junior mortgage or junior lien holder? And to be perfectly honest, what that means is, one, let me back up. One, I am also organizing with Rent Help Minnesota, which is through Minnesota Housing and our public health department, to have navigators specifically at this property to help residents fill out the application, but it's not restricted to this property. But it did come about because this property in particular. So I have reached out to Minnesota Housing. I have reached out to a couple other entities, and I have navigators ready to go that can be on site, and also looking at a place that they can set up in Bloomington 1 to 2 days a week, where residents can come to complete the application to get rent help. So that's one thing. The other thing is we have provided funding to through our CDBG coronavirus money that we manage for the city of Bloomington to VEEP for rental assistance. So that's another piece that has happened. Thirdly, we have applied for additional CDBG dollars for rental and mortgage assistance, and have identified Clues, which is a culturally specific focused organization for Spanish speaking and Latinx community, which there's a higher population, that if awarded, they would also be administering rent assistance. So aside from just directly with this agreement, putting things in place to allow for rent to be paid, back rent to be paid, and future rent. Then I'll come back to this agreement. Really, it comes down to the tools in our toolbox and the loan agreement that we have, which would be the option that we have as a junior mortgage would be to sue. So basically foreclosing, which is not something we necessarily want to do, but that's because we are not a senior lien holder. That is one of the positions that we're really placed in through our loan agreement. And so that's the other part. But otherwise, we have a really good partnership with Aon, open communication, have been speaking with them. We did all meet in person to initially discuss like, hey, what's going on here? We have to have our payment, and then working through from there. So I don't have a better guarantee for you, but that is where we're at.
Thank you, Administrator Coleman.
Commissioner Lewis.
Yes, Commissioner Thorson and then Commissioner Beloga.
I appreciate the explanation. I could certainly be supportive as long as we, the board, do approve the execution of such a document. Some of you may recall that at least a couple of us, if not all of us, had some concerns about Aon and their acquisitions and doing an awful lot around the metro area, and had some concerns that maybe they are biting off a little bit more than they could chew, so to speak. And I'm hoping that this isn't a sign of just that, with the whole coronavirus complicating things. But it sounds like I'm concerned it could be a little of each, and perhaps they've acted a little bit too aggressively and overpromised, maybe not just in this area, but perhaps in others. So I think we need to negotiate in the interests of the city of Bloomington and its residents and taxpayers. And I also think along the lines, I believe, of what Commissioner Hugheim was getting at is, what's to stop this from rolling forward? And I think that, perhaps in the negotiation, a missed payment would allow us, a missed payment, let's say they missed the first agreed upon payment, whatever that is, that should allow us to take a fresh look at the whole agreement, I believe, or some such protection. Well, that's all I have at this point.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Beloga.
Thank you, Chair. So my focus of question is the entity that controls this project. Are they current on their mortgage payments to the primary lenders?
As far as we know, I will learn more in negotiations.
So we're not aware yet of what the entity that holds title to the property, their financial condition is explicitly. Go ahead, please.
Not explicitly. I have spoken with the bank that they formed a consortium when they went to purchase this property, as well as others, in reference to what Commissioner Thorson had said, because they have purchased other properties around the metro. I think they did about 3 of them at one time, and these are
Yep.
quite large projects. And so I had spoken to the bank, and when I spoke with the bank, not specific to where their financial situation was, but just about, what's going on and what the ability is, they were still in a good relationship with the individuals that I spoke with that were higher up in the bank. So
my comments then are, I understand the situation better, and thank you for that information, and could support that. But some of the information that I would request is that we have very specific information on not only the entity that holds title to this project, but all cross indemnification agreements that you, if I'm interpreting what you said correctly, and the overall status, financial condition of Aon itself. This entity still could be in a viable condition with Aon itself being problematic. So we need to look at both parties, I believe. And they also just lost their long-term leader within the past 30 days or so. So, they're seemingly in a state of flux, which, as a lender always creates some concern, huh? And I'm sure you share that experientially. So,
yep. So yes. So I want to clarify. So because I'm taking notes, I want to make sure I'm clarifying what I heard. In entering into negotiations and possibly modification of the repayment structure to bring back that what is negotiated upon for approval, with specific information about who the senior lien holder or senior mortgage is, what the financial status is of that loan, as well as the financial status overall of Aon, to provide better, clearer picture about what can be done in terms of, can you actually pay? Can you pay if we restructure? Can you repay on time? And then within that, making sure to include, I've learned this new term with our CFO, belts and suspenders, that basically say, if you miss a payment or you don't do something, we have belts and suspenders to kind of snatch this back and say, nope, that's not what we agreed to, and we need to have more reassurance. Am I correct? Clarification.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Did we
Hello?
lose Administrator Coleman? Because
Yeah,
he was
Commissioner
breaking up.
Thorson, can you hear? Administrator Coleman was breaking up a little bit. Did you have a question, Commissioner Thorson?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioner Beloga?
For the majority of the things that I could hear and understand, which was about 90% of it, that is the information that I look at. Just for the sake of clarity, it's both entities, Blooming Metals, which I believe is a separate entity, and Aon, which is the umbrella, as far as the financial condition.
Thank you. I got that.
Chair Lewis?
Yes, Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. I just want to make 2, I think, pretty brief comments. One is that through all of this discussion, one of the things I felt a need to do is to get back to why this development is something that we have supported and wanted to happen. And that's that means it's important to look for ways to make it happen. I feel good about, I'm comfortable with the discussions that have happened, the questions, the comments, responses from Director Coleman. And I just want to add, Dr. Coleman, you mentioned a number of sources for like getting the rent application forms filled out to reduce the delay or whatever of payments of rent. We had the Bloomington Housing Action Team meeting this afternoon, and if Mr. Hartman is still on, he can maybe clarify this, but Marty McDonough, I think his name is, from the owners of rentable facilities, indicated that the legislature, I think, have been talking about a zero balance program that apparently would involve the owners of the housing properties and the renters. And that sounded like it's another program that might be helping out. The context for me is that COVID has thrown us, excuse me, but on our butts, and we're getting back up, and we're gonna make this work, which isn't a guarantee, of course. But bottom line is, I'm ready to support a motion to do what staff have asked of us tonight.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there any further discussion or questions for Administrator Coleman?
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
I would like to modify my request.
Thank you. That was my next, I was writing down the modification. Yes.
I would like to modify my request as staff is requesting a motion to authorize staff to negotiate and modify a repayment structure to the development agreement and loan documents and any other documents related to as necessary for 1930 East 86th Street. So I'm removing the request to execute.
All right. So then that would be coming back to us.
Yes.
To approve. All right.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes, Commissioner Thorson.
And this certainly wouldn't have to be a part of any motion, but I would just request that this be brought back to us in a manner that it is not something that, should the commission have concerns and want to address some things at a future meeting, that it's not something that's either take or leave it for the board, but that or there be some kind of communication along the way. Because sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we're 90% there, but there are concerns, and it's kind of left on the table as well. You either got to vote for it, or they're going to go in fault, or whatever it is that's come up in the past. So if it could be something that that is brought far enough ahead we're informed of it, so we can get some of those sometimes maybe not major issues, but tweaking done. And then brought back to us if need be.
Thank you, Commissioner Thorson. Yes, Administrator.
Yes. So I want to say that this will be coming back to you in that manner, Chair, Commissioner Thorson, where we will be looking to review and discuss what the components are. And at that meeting, which I am pretty sure at this point will be the June, sorry, I was looking at my calendar, the June 29th meeting will include our General Counsel, Carla Peterson, who is also very involved and very much so experienced with this, to also answer any questions and to get direction.
Thank you, Administrator Coleman. And I would say, yeah, I echo Commissioner Thorson's comments, particularly since that payment date is July 15th. It doesn't give us a lot of time, but yeah, I don't want it to be like, okay, got 3 days, it's next week, approve this. So that's great. Thank you for addressing that. All right, I would be looking for a motion and I would prefer not to restate it since Commissioner or Administrator Coleman has already done it, and I'm sure I'm going to mess it up. But I would be looking for a motion to approve her amended or adjusted motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move the motion as stated by Administrator Coleman.
Thank you. Thank you for formalizing that. It sounded much better, Commissioner Beloga. Is there a second?
Commissioner Olson seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. It has been moved by Commissioner Beloga, seconded, that's a hard word, by Commissioner Olson. I will now call for a vote on the motion as stated by Administrator Coleman. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, no. Myra, could you take the roll call vote, please?
Beloga.
Aye.
Hugheim.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you, Myra. We will now go back to our organizational business. Item 5.1, an update. Let's see, 5.1, return to in-person commission meetings. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Lewis, Erica Coleman, HRA Administrator. And so this has been discussion, and we did discuss it at our last meeting to get direction on what that would look like and when, if returning to in-person meetings. One, when can we return? But two, if we return, is there going to be a hybrid option available? So the question actually came up in multiple places. And so the city legal and HRA legal worked to look at the statute and the current situation and what it would be going forward. So basically right now, we are still under the executive order, the governor's executive order, which allows us to meet virtually. As of Monday, June 14th, that is the special session for the legislature. At that point, the executive order could be ended or it could be extended. If the executive order is ended, it ends on the 14th, and our next meeting would need to be in person. I'm sorry, I said the dates wrong. Our next meeting is not the 29th, it is the 22nd from the previous action. So let me clear that up. Our next meeting is the 22nd. And so if the executive order ends on the 14th, which is Monday, then on the 22nd, we will be required to meet in person. And the carve out or the ability with that is that if there is a concern or an issue, there's ability for someone who has a medical need continue to attend the meetings remotely from a private location with a doctor's note. So there has to be some type of formal documentation that says there's a medical necessity here. On top of that, it's only good for 60 days after the executive order ends. So if the executive order ends on the 14th of June, it would only be good for 60 days from that date of June 14th. Also, it's only allowed for up to 3 meetings within the 60-day time frame. That is what is currently in statute, and we have been advised that by our lobbyist, as well as Shane Redling, who does the legislative agenda for the city, that's probably not going to be changing. It's not even being brought forward in special session, which is where it would have to change, is at the legislature. However, if the executive order is continued, which at this point is likely, nobody is giving any sure. is likely because the executive order is tied to the eviction moratorium. So if the executive order is extended, then on the 22nd, we can meet in person, but we would not be required to. And so we're kind of in this limbo place. And I wanted to bring it forward and have discussion with you all, with commissioners, because I know this was something that was brought up, and we didn't have much information then. But we could move to a hybrid model right now, pending the outcome of the executive order, is really where we're at. I know I left the complete letter that was actually typed up by our general counsel, is what I attached to the agenda item. And so I won't read through it, but we can have a discussion, or I'll answer any questions that anyone may have. You're on mute, Chair.
On mute. Thank you for that. And I do have a question, Administrator Coleman. If we were to go to hybrid, and I'm looking at that 60 days. So for 60 days, a person who wanted to meet virtually could still do so for 3 meetings and do it in a private place? I mean, like at their home? Would that be accurate?
No, sorry, Chair Lewis. If the executive order is ended, or whenever it's ended,
Okay.
60 days from the date that it's ended, only those that have a medical necessity and a doctor's note to show the medical necessity or the documentation are allowed to meet virtually, and they can only do it for up to 3 meetings in that 60-day time period.
Okay.
So it's not just who wants to do it. If the executive order is ended, you are required to come back in person.
Okay. But, all right, so the hybrid would be,
The hybrid would be if the executive order is not, or if the executive order is extended, we can still take the option to go to a hybrid,
all right,
hybrid meeting atmosphere. And then that 60 days time frame does not start until the executive order actually is ended.
so basically we would be like we are now, except if we went hybrid, there might be some of us that would be at City Hall, some who would be at home. If
Yes.
they go to.
Yes, and if you do choose that, and mind you, I'm bringing that up because I heard the interest of the commissioners, wanting to be able to be in person safely, but also have the ability that if it's not safe for individuals to have a option to be virtual. So I'm bringing up the hybrid option now. I still need to talk with IT, because we all, as different boards and commissions, are looking at what does that look like,
Right.
and the opportunity to record our meetings or be live with them has been something that's nice, but how do we continue it
If we go hybrid.
if we go hybrid?
All right, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that a little bit. I mean, it's still confusing. If the order isn't rescinded and we determine to go hybrid, will anybody who is not coming to the meetings or requesting virtual meetings, will they need a doctor's excuse? I mean, I know if the order is rescinded, they would need a doctor's letter, essentially. If it's not rescinded, would we need to be that formal? Okay.
No, we would not.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Just, I want to clarify all of our options. Commissioners, are there any questions for Administrator Coleman, or any things that you want to discuss, comments that you'd like to make? I'm not, Commissioner Beloga, I saw your microphone come on.
Thank you. One of the things is the doctor's note. that becomes matter of public record. And I just want to share that information with all of the other commissioners so that, we can take that into account as we're looking at what each individual's preferences are. So it's unfortunate because that's very personal and private information, but it does become, at least my understanding of the way the current statute is written, it does become part of information that's available by request of the public. So, no comments beyond that. Just wanted to share that information.
Right. And that is a little disturbing. I mean, no one wants that kind of information public. My medical records, I would feel uncomfortable about it, but like you said, we're dealing with the state statute. Are there any other comments or questions for Administrator Coleman? Hearing none, thank you for that update. I guess we just have to wait to see what happens.
Chair Lewis, sorry.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Hukim.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. If the executive order is ended, then will you guys notify us? I mean, obviously we will probably all know, but what would be the notification? Just because we'd have to then make that, I guess, public as well. What would be the notification to let us know that we all need to be back into the building and which room we need to be in, I guess?
Yep. So the first step would be an email. So like this letter here, this was the city attorney, Melissa Manderscheid, and our attorney, Carla Peterson, that worked on this. They would work on that notification, and it would be an email first off. And then basically Myra and myself would be in a flurry to book rooms. Actually, we wouldn't. Myra is on top of it and actually already booked a room. I would need to understand very quickly how to work the IT. And because that was the other piece, was that there's not necessarily enough equipment. And we're all learning this hybrid model. I've done a couple of hybrid meetings. They're really neat to do, but there's something else to try and set up and understand how to work. So first off, it would be an email notification that would have been put together by legal, so that it's the same for city council and for our boards and commissions. It's just working with all the different attorneys for the separate entities for the port and or the HRA. And then it would be additional notification regarding what the room is and how we would move forward.
Thank you, Administrator Coleman. I just have one quick follow-up, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Since we haven't really discussed this, I don't like to assume anything, but I'm kind of assuming that since we didn't discuss going hybrid, we're just all going to go with the fact of if the executive order is extended, we're going to stay virtual. I guess I just want clarification of where we're sitting as a board on that, because we really didn't discuss that option. So I just want to know where we are as a board, if we just want to stay virtual or if we're talking about going to that hybrid option.
I'm going to throw that out to the commissioners. I know for myself, if a hybrid model could be put into place that would work effectively and comfortably, I would probably lean toward the hybrid. But safety is the first issue for me. And if it turned out to be just too much, technically just too difficult to do, I'm comfortable staying virtual. But that would be sort of, right now I lean hybrid, but I'd be comfortable if we had to stay virtual.
So I just want to offer one thing really quick. City Plaza is opening to the public on June 14th.
Okay.
So it will, City Plaza will be open.
There'll be people.
And there will be people. Staff is working on a model. So basically, it'll be open June 14th. Staff still have the ability to work remotely or come in if they choose starting June 14th. Some staff are required to come in starting June 14th just because it's customer service and whatnot. And then staff, when I say staff, city staff, the whole city, there is a form that can be completed to request a alternative work schedule, which would mean working elsewhere 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week. I'm not quite sure. It varies based on the job, which will need to go through a 2 to 3 step approval process between the supervisors and city leadership. And that form is due by July 30th. And so staff is in a little bit of a hybrid place, but we also are not restricted by statute, such as the city council and the boards and commissions may be. So I just want to offer that when you're talking about hybrid, because City Plaza is opening up on Monday.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. What are the feelings of the rest of the commissioners? I mean, here again, like I said, I lean hybrid, but I want to do what's safest for our members. And, you know, depending on what happens, you know, whether that order is rescinded or not, will make a lot of, you know, we're not really going to know for sure what we can do until then. So anybody else's comments?
Commissioner Lewis.
Yes, Commissioner Thorson.
As excited as I am about getting together for in-person meetings, I happen to enjoy them more and I believe they're more productive as well. I don't see an advantage of, you know, let's say half of us being remote and half of us being in a meeting. I think you need to at least have a majority in person in a meeting for it to have the same level of effectiveness of being in a real in-person meeting as I believe it has in the past. So I would also be happy to continue with virtual meetings if there are people who are not yet comfortable with in-person rather than, you know, sort of the hybrid. I would probably choose, if there's only 2 or 3 of us, to just continue virtually or hybrid, whatever you want to call it, if it's, you know, if it's a small number of us that would be there in person anyway. Just my 2 cents.
Valid comment. Commissioner Beloga or Commissioner Olson?
Chair Lewis,
Yes,
I would prefer the hybrid because it allows people to have the option to fit their own needs. And of course, that's not to be contrary to Commissioner Thorson's comments, because I understand those and agree. And then people who could make the choice, and if we could then let, with sufficient notice, everybody know what, you know, the numbers are for in-person, virtual, then those individuals who had planned in person can reevaluate their options. So, and again, it's ground in, as you said earlier, the safety of all. So,
right.
Chair Lewis, one more question I guess I have. I mean, define hybrid. Is it, I mean, obviously the way I look at it is some people are there in person and some people technology wise are joining remotely, but it sounds like they're not going to be joining remotely in a WebEx type environment. So, you know, define what a hybrid meeting is in the city of Bloomington.
Commissioner Beloga, you.
I could help on that since you know, the city council is coming back into chambers on June 14th. Although at that same token, there will be potentially some city council members who may opt to participate in that meeting via WebEx. And there will be some city staff members who may also be presenting information either in person or by WebEx. So it'll truly be a hybrid environment. And that the city manager asked for indication of preference by mid Friday from city council members.
Okay.
So that helps give context to it.
So it sounds like there would still be a WebEx meeting for those people that were still doing distance versus being at.
That is correct. And even if all 7 council members are in chambers, it appears from the comments of the manager that there will be some staff members who will be presenting remotely. There will be the ability to call in for public comment, both for the public comment period and on open agenda items that require public comment via WebEx or in person. So I think it's a true hybrid at this point. So
Thank you for.
And of course, in chambers, there's the technology that exists.
That's true. That's true. Thank you, Commissioner Beloga, for that additional information. That was helpful. Commissioner Thorson, Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. My preference is in person, but only to the extent that it is safe for members of the commission, but also for the public. And I see a parallel with what I was talking about with Lindell Retrofit, is that we are in a period of flux, just like we are with, we don't know the future for sure with Lindell. And that's just something that we've known in any kind of major development within a city, district, whatever. And so I think what will happen is that as COVID hopefully gets even more manageable and whatnot in terms of safety and people's willingness to be interacting with people closer than 6 feet and outdoors and whatever, this will be a shakedown time. And in terms of the technology question, I think the same thing will be happening there too, is that we have an excellent IT staff, and they'll figure it out. The market side will come up with more tools beyond WebEx and Zoom and that kind of stuff. So I'm content to say that I would like to go in person as long as it's safe, but I'll go with whatever the flow is. Thanks.
Well, and here again, until we find out what happens with that emergency order, and then we can start making some decisions once we know what the legislature and the governor have decided. So thank you, Commissioner or Administrator Coleman, for that update. And I think everyone sort of indicated what they're willing to do. And I think what's really great is that as a board, as a commission, we are just concerned at making our members comfortable and what's safe for everybody. And I think that says a lot for our board. So moving on to our last item of business or organizational business, item 5.2, it's the update of the HRA logo.
So thank you, Chair Lewis. Really just wanted to bring forward the idea of an updated logo for the HRA. Reason being is our current logo is really just the letters HRA and the look of a house behind it. So we don't know, well, I shouldn't say we. The average person may not know what the HRA stands for, nor do they know where it's located. So all of our letterhead, we do have HRA logo and then we have the address, but it can be confusing. And so also, we were just kind of like a one-off from the city of Bloomington. We are the Housing and Redevelopment Authority in and for the city of Bloomington. And so did talk with staff and then asked communications to provide a mock-up. And this staff, HRA staff, really had positive feedback about this logo design. And so just wanted to bring it forward to, one, show you all, discuss, and two, it would be a time commitment and a phased approach to update to a different logo. We still have stationery and different things that we would like to use up. We have materials that have the HRA current logo on them, so it's going to take time. But if you do like this, we could move forward with the process to start to plan out the phased approach and implement the phased approach. So I just wanted to bring it forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Administrator Coleman. Commissioners, what do you think of the logo?
Chair Lewis?
Yes, Commissioner Olson.
First impression, for what it's worth, is that it shows, my first impression was I really liked it. And then I thought it shows a traditional house. And a lot of people are in different looking kinds of housing nowadays. I don't know if that can be somehow blended in. The simplicity of what I see here is great, and trying to mix up the kinds of housing would be difficult. So anyway, that first impression.
Any other commissioners? I know.
Chair Lewis, Commissioner Thorson here.
Yes.
I like it. Again, it's a gut reaction. That's a first reaction, but I do like it. It's a nice change from the block letters of the HRA. And I would hope that we would continue to use those old materials as appropriate, so they're not going into a landfill, but phase into a new logo, whatever the final result turns out to be.
Yes. Yes. And for myself, I would say my first look at it, I like it. And I agree, just having HRA, a lot of people don't know what that stands for. We do, but not everybody else does. So I like the fact that it clearly states what it stands for and that we're in Bloomington. So that works a lot for me. Other comments, Commissioner Beloga, Commissioner Hukim?
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I think all of us have a first impression, and I also liked it. And I liked it for many reasons, but it also mirrors and has a strong resemblance. So there's continuity with the city's logo. So not that I'm artistically gifted, which I'm certainly not, but my 2 cents worth is I could live with this.
Yeah. Good comment. Anyone else? Commissioner Hukim?
Thank you, Chair. I also gut reaction. I really do like it. It stands out. Yeah, I just second what everybody else said. So
great. All right. Well, I would say that's a positive response, Administrator Coleman.
Yep.
Yes, it is. I appreciate it. And just as you've noticed, the direction was to be similar to the current city of Bloomington. I believe there's some things with how the city of Bloomington got that logo that we may not fully be able to just take that logo and change the wording. Which is why this one comes a little bit differently, but this actually is probably a little bit more robust than the current logo of the city of Bloomington. So that's nice too. And then, I understand the different types of housing, which I did notice, but I'll also say as we work towards our priorities of homeownership opportunities and Section 8 being our biggest program, even though we do have people in multifamily complexes, we do have a lot of people in homes, and the HRA owns single family homes itself, that this kind of draws that in a little bit more in terms of it can be affordable, but it can be it could be a single family home instead of just thinking affordability might only include multifamily.
Comment. All right, are there any other comments on this item? If not, I would be looking for a motion to adjourn the June 8th, 2021 meeting of the HRA Commission.
So move, Beloga.
Second? Is there a
Second,
second?
Thorson.
All right, so it had been moved by Commissioner Beloga, seconded by Commissioner Thorson, that we adjourn the meeting. Myra, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Beloga,
Aye.
Hugheen,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Olson, Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yep,
Have a good
thank
evening.
you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Aye.
Good meeting.